Welcome back to the Champagne on Ice podcast presented by the Field of 68. Illinois is moving on to the round of 32 as they handle the Xavier Musketeers 86-73 in the 6-11 matchup in the Midwest region in Milwaukee and lead nearly wire to wire in a very impressive performance, which now sets up a heck of a matchup in the round of 32 with the Kentucky Wildcats on Sunday. We will break it all down right here on this episode. I am Kyle Tausk, joined as always by Mike Farmer. And Mike, how are we feeling as we record this less than 12 hours after Illinois puts together a really impressive showing to take care of Xavier?
I feel great, man. Obviously, a huge win against a team that was pretty hot coming into this game. Just a complete performance all around from Illinois, really. Uh, Almost had a home court advantage, it seemed like, in Milwaukee. A great showing from the Illinois faithful, so that was fun to see. And yeah, it's just good to be back. Good to be back in the round of 32 for fourth time in 5 years, I want to say. It's a place that Illinois hadn't been for most of our childhood, really. So it's always appreciate them getting back there.
Yeah, Illinois has won at least one game in the tournament, and four of the five tournaments they actually had a chance to play in under Brad Underwood, the one first round loss being that 22-23 team, which I said before this game or before this tournament that I had like zero trust in that team going into the tournament. And while it was hard for me to trust this team a ton going into the tournament, I definitely trusted them more than that team. And I'm glad that that kind of got validated with last night's game. It just felt like this team still had something left in them, and the vibes were overall better with this team than that team 2 years ago, which just felt like there was no chance they even won a game. And it just, something felt so off. Other than that year, though, which was just kind of fell apart throughout and had all sorts of drama, Brad Underwood at least gets there and puts together competitive showings. Now, can Illinois get back to the Sweet 16 for the second straight year after not going to one for 19 years? That would be the next goal against Kentucky, and we will talk about that matchup coming up here in a little bit. But let's talk about this win over Xavier, 86-73. You mentioned it. Xavier was red hot coming in. Xavier put together a really impressive second half against Texas to even get to this game, and that the experience difference heading into this matchup is one that really worried me. Xavier being the second most experienced team in Division I, Illinois in the 300s. Xavier had two guys, two all Big East guys, two really good players, and Ryan Conwell and Zach Fremantle. Illinois did a phenomenal job on both defensively, which we can talk about. And early in this game, the pace was unbelievable. There wasn't immediate timeout until like the 13.5-minute mark of the first half, and both teams were flying up and down the floor. It had the makings of an epic, high-scoring, high-paced, back-and-forth March battle between these two teams based on those first 7 minutes. And then Illinois kind of just separated themselves slowly, and Xavier made little runs here and there. Illinois, I think, got it up to 9 in the first half at one point. Then Xavier was within 2 with about 10 seconds left in the first half. Kylan Boswell hits a step-back 3, which is a huge shot to kind of stymie the Xavier momentum. Illinois goes to the locker room up 5. Illinois comes out super strong in the second half, pushes the lead to double digits. Xavier did have a run in them to get it back to, I think, 8 with about 5 minutes left, and then Illinois makes a couple more plays, pulls away, and this game really didn't feel like it was totally in doubt for a lot of the second half. Illinois was in full control, and just a really impressive showing. You look down the box score, Kasparas Yakichonis, 1 rebound away from a triple-double. Didn't shoot it great at 3 for 11, but gets to the free throw line, 10 assists, mixed in some turnovers there, but I thought overall he was really, really good. Will Riley, second half heater, 22 points and 4 rebounds for him on 8 of 12 shooting. Tomislav Ivicic was a matchup nightmare for Xavier. They couldn't figure out what to do with him. He hit 4 threes, 20 points, 10 rebounds. Kylan Boswell, I thought, showed the veteran presence, the guy who had played in 3 NCAA tournament games before with 15 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. Trey White chips in 7 and 7. Merez comes in 6 points, 5 rebounds off the bench. So just a really impressive showing for this Illinois team. The young guys met the moment, were not afraid of the big stage. The experience difference did not show itself at all on the floor, which I thought was one of the biggest takeaways I had from this game. But what are your thoughts coming off this win?
I think, as I said, just a complete overall performance from the guys that played, pretty much besides Ben Hummerkaus. But I mean, I'm not super worried about that. He had a cold shooting night. I think it all starts with Tomislav Ivicic. We've said this at length, like especially in the first half of the season, most notably in that Arkansas game on Thanksgiving, when he and I guess when KJ has the ball and they're running the pick and roll or the pick and pop, when he can step back and hit those threes in the first 10 or so minutes of the game, Illinois has a 90% chance to win that game, and that's not even exaggerating. And he had a couple in the Xavier game, and as you said, Xavier had just absolutely no answer. Fremantle and Hughley and whatever bigs they were trying to put on Tommy were trying to, help off and try to get KJ, and Tommy's wide open at the top of the key, and he's going to hit that three most of the time. And he did in this game, which was absolutely massive. And then, as you said, KJ, phenomenal game as well. One rebound away from a triple double, which was crazy to say, considering he didn't even shoot that well in this game. But I thought his effort and just his IQ was really nice in this game. And that's what you need against a veteran team who's the second most experienced team in the country and who's hot, who had been playing super hot, as we've said. Kylan Boswell, just a steadying presence. Trey White, a steadying presence as well. And then Will Riley, that second half heater we've seen it a couple times recently, but that was one of the best ones, considering the matchup and the stakes of the game. I thought Merez was pretty solid off the bench in his minutes. Like, I thought it all started with the offense and with Tomislav hitting those threes at the start of the game, especially. But I didn't think the defense was bad at all. Like, I thought Kylan Boswell did a great job against Conwell. Zach Fremantle he hit a couple shots, but pretty limited overall. Like, the announcer Van Gundy kept saying Fremantle needs to go at Tommy, and he did a couple times, but for the most part, it wasn't working. Didn't really hit his threes besides that tough one he hit in the first half. Um, Dalen Swain had most of the points for Xavier, kind of a surprise offensive showing from him for Xavier. But like you'll live with that. He had a couple threes that he usually doesn't hit. Not a great shooter overall. Illinois lived with that and kind of locked down the rest of their matchups besides Dante Maddox at the start. So just as I said, great performance overall offensively from Riley, KJ, Tommy, all those guys. And then defensively, they locked down. I thought they did a nice job with post defense. Like Will Riley getting back, guys stopping fast breaks, guys going for blocks and diving for balls. Like the effort was there. Some of the things we've questioned in past games in terms of effort and leadership and guys making the right play at the right time. You didn't really have to worry about that in this game. Like guys were just on top of it. It felt like even the international guys, there was some talk about, are they up for the moment? Do they understand how important March Madness and these tournaments are for Illinois and for the fan base? It seems like they have for the most part, especially in the most important game they've played, which was this round of 64 game against Xavier.
Yeah, I'm glad you went to the defensive side because that honestly was the story of the game for me as much as the offense was great, and there's a lot to talk about there. I said coming into this first weekend that defense is going to be the story for me for Illinois. How well they guard is going to dictate how far they make it through this pod, and it's a good start against a Xavier team who had been playing great basketball offensively during this 8 of 9 streak down the stretch of the season. They had been fantastic. Ryan Conwell was averaging over 20 points a game. Zach Fremantle hadn't been in single-digit points all season long before this game. He missed some time with an injury, but still just really impressive to hold him to 5 points. I thought he could be a problem for Illinois, especially with Tommy in there trying to guard him. I thought Illinois did a spectacular job on both of those guys. Kylan was phenomenal on Conwell. Sean Miller ran a great little set to get Conwell a 3 on the first possession of the game, which he buried. After that point, he was 2 for 9 from the floor, and I thought Boswell just locked him up. And Tommy and Merez both did an awesome job on Fremantle, who felt very hesitant when he touched the ball. Van Gundy was adamant that Fremantle should be more aggressive. He just felt like he was almost scared off because Tommy's height and size were bothering him a little bit, and he had missed a couple open threes that he got early in the game. But I thought Illinois was really, really good, particularly in half-court defense. I think they did get bit a little bit in transition, and even really just when Xavier would push off of makes, when they beat Illinois down the floor 3 or 4 times off of made shots, which is something that Kentucky tries to do too, is going to be huge for Illinois to clean that up. Some of the pace that Xavier played with hurt Illinois. That's where they generated a lot of their easy points. In the half court, Illinois guarded great. Xavier fell into the trap of Illinois' drop defense in terms of taking a lot of little 10-foot floaters and little runner shots and mid-range shots. That's exactly what Brad Underwood wants. And Dalen Swain scoring 27, I guarantee, is actually making Brad Underwood smile, because it looked like the game plan from the start was he's the non-guard guy. He's the guy that will leave open on the three-point line. He hits 3 threes. He had made 4 threes all year before that. I mean, when you give a guy some of the open shots, we've talked about it before, like the way Illinois just refuses to guard guys. I mean, these are D1 college basketball players. They probably can make these shots. You live with the 27 from Swain, though, if it means Conwell gets 12 on 3 of 10 and Fremantle gets 5 on 2 of 9. That seemed like Illinois' game plan was, let as many shots as Dalen Swain wants to take. That means that Xavier Stars aren't taking them. And sure enough, over 40 minutes results in a 13-point win. I think Illinois was just fine with that Swain performance, and I wonder how they'll try to approach that against Kentucky, too, who has a couple guys who are of similar to Swain in terms of just kind of the non-offensive threat. Seems like that's something that Illinois prioritizes, but defensively, I thought Illinois was great. They had entered the NCAA tournament really struggling on that end of the floor. I thought they were really bad defensively in the Big Ten tournament. They had shown some good signs towards the end of the regular season, but they've been so up and down defensively. And just to see really most guys on this team guard really well. I thought KJ played great defensively. He showed just some toughness and effort on the defensive end that is kind of up and down with him. And he had that one breakaway steal, which was kind of the game-sealing dagger, which was nice to see as well. But with Boswell guarding Conwell the way he did, that's a great sign, because you need him to be the defensive stopper. Kentucky's got multiple offensive weapons. I think he'll probably be on Otega Owe in that game. And just to see Illinois on the interior hold up as well, I thought was huge in this game, and a big reason why Illinois was able to win. And they're going to need to do it again, because they definitely drew some high-level offensive teams in this bracket. So if it was a Big Ten tournament type of defensive showing, I think it was going to be a short weekend for them.
Yeah, no question about it. I think with KJ defensively, it was really noticeable how he fought over screens. He did not let himself get screened in this game, especially like at the top of the key. Just like all of it was effort, because guys like, I don't want to complain about the refs because we won and we had like 2 fouls in the entire first half, but Hughley and Fremantle were not even setting screens. They were like sliding their feet and just throwing elbows and jabbing at KJ. He did not care at all. He was fighting over every single one. When he was deflecting balls, he's diving into the scorer's table and going for steals, like you said. So that's just the kind of stuff you need to see if you want to be confident in Illinois winning a game like that and winning the next game and winning the next game and going on a run in March. Because you need, like at the end of the day, you do need your veterans like Boswell and Trey White to be at their best and be showing effort on every single play. But at the same time, your freshmen, Will Riley, KJ, they have to be showing effort. And they have to be the ones really leading you, as they did in this game, in the box score and just effort-wise. So I thought that was super encouraging. Overall, like the rotation shortened up a little bit. Dre barely played. Jake Davis didn't get in. Hummerkaus came off the bench again, got some minutes, but it really didn't do a whole lot. And then Merez was pretty solid in his minutes, I thought. Just battling down there with Hughley and Fremantle and not letting himself get in tough positions. And if he did, he was bouncing back and fighting on the next possession. But like I thought the starting 5 was just fantastic the entire night. Trey White got it going with a layup and then hit a pretty big 3 later in the game. So I thought that was pretty crucial. Had 7 rebounds as well. Like as we've said, he's not a guy that you need 14, 15, 16 points from. You just need him to be that steadying presence, and he was that this entire game. So I thought that was really good to see. And then the other 4 were your motors offensively, especially Will Riley in the second half and Tommy in the first half. And then Kylan and KJ were pretty steady throughout. Kylan Boswell hitting 3s is just a crazy switch up from what we've seen in pretty much the entire season. I'm not saying he needs to be a 50% three-point shooter in March, but if he's somewhere around there or even above 30, 35%, that unlocks a whole new level to this offense. Will Riley hit his shots as well. Tommy hit his shots. KJ didn't really, but like he's kind of similar. He's gotten to a point where you don't really need him to hit every shot he's taking. You'd like him to be above 3 for 11 or so, but like he'll come in and he'll hit the big ones, he'll hit the open ones, and he'll still provide tons of opportunities for other guys to hit shots, and that's what we saw in this game. He really got back to passing. Like his some of his passes were beautiful. He was finding guys in rhythm, finding open shooters, finding Tommy quite a bit. And that's why he had 10 assists. And he had not had a big assist game in quite some time. I don't know the actual numbers on that, but Will Riley and Boswell had kind of stepped up as primary playmakers. That changed a little bit in this game. Like KJ was just dominating Xavier's defense. A big part of that was Tommy actually hitting shots and other guys hitting shots like Trey White and Boswell and Riley. But still, I thought KJ played phenomenal overall. So you're gonna need to see a lot more of that defensively, as we talked about against Kentucky, and onwards after that if Illinois extends their run. And then offensively, you're gonna need to continue to hit shots. But they've been hitting shots in recent games. Besides really that Maryland first half, and I guess the entire Maryland game, Illinois has been pretty hot offensively. You know, two of those games were against Iowa. Purdue's not a great defense. Michigan hadn't been great when we were playing them, or wasn't great after we played them. But overall, like Illinois has been a lot better offensively. You've seen Will Riley really just emerge from that midseason slump. He's a whole new player. He looks like the first round talent that Illinois fans were promised in the offseason. KJ got back to that in this game as well. So it's just been really encouraging, you know, like I personally didn't pick Illinois to beat Xavier in this game because I just didn't feel confident enough to choose Illinois in a one game situation. Like they just hadn't inspired enough confidence in me to pick them against a veteran team that's been pretty hot recently. They silenced me. They silenced a lot of people. They were a very popular upset pick in this one, and they put that to rest. And they're going to be playing in the round of 32 against Kentucky, a team that's pretty similar to them, a team that's gone through the tests and the gauntlet of the SEC as Illinois did in the Big Ten. So it's going to be a really fun matchup to watch on Sunday, and I can't wait for it.
It's only the second time in 14 tournaments since they expanded to 68 that a first four team has not won a round of 64 game. As soon as Ole Miss beat North Carolina, I was terrified because I thought Xavier absolutely was going to be the one to do it. But Illinois ends that string. I think it had been like 7 straight tournaments too where a team had won. So that's definitely encouraging. I just think the freshmen for Illinois did not look like freshmen in this game, which is so important. And those guys really, I mean, KJ has barely looked like a freshman all season, just from like a IQ standpoint, just from a maturity standpoint. Yeah, he's made mistakes and he's had his turnover problems, but just like the poise that he shows within a game, really from the second he stepped on campus, he looked like a fourth-year point guard more than a first-year point guard. But I think that's always kind of the narrative heading into tournaments. And even before Illinois went to more of this younger roster with 2 first-round draft picks, there's always like, can I trust these young teams, these freshman-built teams, the ones that are led by freshmen in the tournament, because they're just so volatile, and especially when they're running into older teams. I can understand, and I honestly was hesitant too, especially seeing this draw with Xavier being the second most experienced team in D1, Kentucky now 7th. I was worried about it because as talented as these guys are, it's just a dangerous game to play in the tournament when you have such a young team. And those guys stepped up and did not look like freshmen at all. That's huge to see. And the way Will Riley has played, I mean, the confidence that he had, even after he started slow, I'll be honest, early in the game, I thought Will Riley had the jitters and just did not look right. And I was worried like, oh boy, this is, he's not really ready for this moment early. He missed 2 layups in the first like 8 minutes of the game and just looked a little off. And that did not discourage him at all. He started 0 for 3 and finished the game 8 for 9 from the floor and just was so confident in the second half, operating pull-up jump shots, moving without the ball, continuing his unbelievable cutting work that he's done with Tommy, who made a heck of a pass to find him. He had a heck of a hesitation move to drive for a dunk, just was showing off the whole bag. And KJ from early on in the game, he got Illinois started just with the display he was putting on in ball screens, finding Tommy, finding Merez on rolls, finding Kylan, who had a nice little slip on a Spain back screen, and KJ, like no look, found him for a layup. He put on a show in this game. I know he turned it over a little bit in the second half. I know he didn't shoot it well. I just thought he was really good just from a maturity standpoint and from a offensive operation standpoint, the way he handled things, the way he moved the ball, got Illinois into offense. Like you said, the toughness that he showed, I thought he was physical in this game, whether it was defensively or offensively. That's something that's huge. Obviously, we talk about the veteran guys, like you said, Boswell, White. I know Tommy's kind of a first-year guy, so you could throw him into either group, really, the freshmen that showed up on this stage or the guys that have played high-level basketball before, because he definitely has. He could fit into either one. But, KJ and Will are the two guys that talk the ceiling of this team, how far they can ultimately go. Those guys got to be the star-level players. And to see them both put up star-level performances in this game, in their first NCAA tournament game, was just super impressive. And the way Will Riley has played is just, it cannot be said enough how good this guy has been for like a month and a half. Ever since that heater he had in East Lansing in the first half, and then even really a couple games after that he got sick, and then he came back, and I believe it was the at Nebraska game where he had a nice second half to kind of keep Illinois in it, get it to overtime. Since then, I mean, he's been one of the better players in the country at times with the way that he plays. And I just think, and even 2 blocks for him, I thought he was good defensively and showed some things there. He got back in transition, had a heck of a block once. Boy, if those guys play like this, I think Illinois' ceiling is what we've thought it could be. But you're going to have to do it one more game in a row against another experienced team. But I have some confidence after seeing how both those guys handled this game that they'll show up, and the moment will not be too big for these guys, which sometimes it can be for freshmen in the tournament, but for Illinois it was not at all.
Yeah, they looked like fifth-year guys. They looked like R.J. Davis and other fifth-year seniors out there. So it was crazy to see, really. I had a feeling Will Riley would be kind of the guy that shows up in huge moments. Like I remember picking him in like November and December to be the guy that would just come up in late game situations and be the guy. Like KJ showed it a couple times, but I always kind of had a feeling Will Riley would eventually show it late in games, especially in March. So it's been fantastic to see. And yeah, I think you said it, we both said it. People have said it the entire year. KJ and Will are the first round talents. They're the potential lottery picks. They're the guys that made the All Big Ten teams. Like they have to be the guys that in the end lead this team and take the big shots and have the ball in their hands in late game situations in the tournaments and in March. And the way things are looking, I kind of agree with you. I like Illinois' chances in this one against Kentucky. Like if it gets down to it, I know Kentucky has a bunch of veterans and Otega Owe and Butler and guys that have been in big situations before. But like KJ and Will are just killers, man. Like I get where Kentucky fans would be coming from and picking them against a younger Illinois team that's been inconsistent all year. But I'm really starting to like the way Illinois is playing and how guys have solidified their roles and are really confident in what they're doing on the court, both offensively and defensively, really, based on what we saw against Xavier last night. So I think Illinois is playing their best brand of basketball at the right time. They shot it super well in this game against Xavier, especially in the first half and for most of the second half, really. So, like, the offense has been good. The defense hasn't been great overall in the season, but it's getting better. And I thought the Xavier performance was super encouraging, locking down Conwell, locking down Fremantle with a group effort. So I think Underwood has his guys playing just their best basketball at the right time, which was kind of what we predicted for most of the season and what we wanted to see for the past couple months while Illinois was on that cold streak with dealing with injuries and illnesses and all that stuff. They've bounced back, and I think part of it is the leadership from guys like White and Boswell, which Underwood has talked about so much. You saw that in this past game. Just guys diving for the ball, fighting through screens, securing defensive rebounds. Illinois had a huge rebounding margin in this game. That was probably one of the more underrated keys to this game, I thought, because Xavier was a solid rebounding team. They were good at keeping opposing offenses off the offensive glass. Illinois had some big offensive rebounds in this one that extended possessions and got them more looks. So Illinois is just, with the veterans leading and with the freshmen understanding their roles and KJ understanding, hey, I don't have to be the guy that's going for 25 points every game and taking every shot in crunch time. Other guys have stepped up now. This isn't Arkansas in November. This isn't Northwestern in December. Like, we're in March now. Will Riley has played like one of the better players in the country, as you've said. When Tommy's hitting threes, he's one of the better players in the conference probably. Boswell has been really good offensively for the better part of a month or so. So like he doesn't have to do it by himself, and Will Riley understanding that, hey, I'm a first round pick. Like in a couple months, I'm going to be a first round talent, and I'm better than the guys that are guarding me. I'm better than Xavier. I'm probably better than Kentucky's defenders. So like I'm going to take my time. I'm going to work my guy down, get to the hoop, and just find a bucket. So guys are understanding that this isn't November and December. Like they understand that um, they've found their roles and they're doing what their coach wants them to do finally. And the offense is clicking, the offense is flowing. So yeah, it's looked pretty really. And I think Kentucky's defense is exploitable. I think if Illinois gets past Kentucky potentially, a potential matchup with Tennessee or maybe UCLA is exploitable defensively. So this game kind of solidified my take. Like I was not confident coming into this game. I didn't pick Illinois on the podcast. I didn't pick Illinois in my bracket. I thought Xavier would win this one, and I thought Xavier would probably beat Kentucky actually. Now I'm in the opposite boat. I think Illinois probably beats Kentucky, which we'll get into in a little bit. But yeah, we've seen a couple of performances now where I can finally say like Illinois is playing their best basketball at the right time, and I would feel somewhat confident actually picking them to win a big game like we have against Kentucky on Sunday.
Yeah, the rebounding needs to be like the baseline for Illinois. They're not dominating the glass or at least winning the battle on the glass, and it makes everything else so much harder. That needs to be like the thing that happens, no questions asked, every game with the way that this team has rebounded all year. 45-25 on the glass, just so hard to overcome for anybody, and that's something that they'll have to do against Kentucky as well. And then 40% shooting from three. When Illinois shoots that well, it is going to be really hard to beat this team. I know the stat has been thrown around like for the last month about how I think Illinois now is 20-2 when they shoot over 27% from three. Sometimes there needs to be more context involved in that, but the overall broader point, which is true, is that when this team is just a solid shooting team, let alone a 40% shooting team, a good shooting team, boy, they're going to be hard to beat. And those two things are going to need to happen against this Kentucky team, which let's talk about it. Illinois and Kentucky on Sunday, 4:15 on CBS. Boy, that environment in Milwaukee should be unbelievable with those two fan bases. Illinois fans will surely be there. Big Blue Nation for Kentucky travels everywhere, and it's like a 7-hour drive from Lexington. No problem for that fan base. Should be an unbelievable neutral site environment, probably a true 50-50 split if I had to guess. For that game, which should be really fun. The total in this game is 170.5. If you like offense, if you like pace, this should be a highly entertaining game. I think even Illinois bias aside, I think just looking at the slate of round of 32 games, I think Illinois-Kentucky might be the most fun matchup of the entire second round, just from a college basketball perspective. Two awesome offenses, two really good coaches, two teams with a lot of talent. I think this is going to be a really fun battle. Another really experienced team. This is not your average Kentucky team under Coach Calipari. This is an old team. Mark Pope brought in a lot of old transfers. Lamont Butler was in a national title game 2 years ago with San Diego State. Otega Oweh, a junior who's played at Oklahoma for 2 years before this. Has a couple guys that transferred up levels with Kobe Brea, who's one of the best shooters in the country, coming up from Dayton. Amari Williams from Drexel, who's an athletic freak, who has like a 7'6" wingspan at the 5 spot. Andrew Carr comes from Wake Forest. So other than Butler, not a ton of NCAA tournament experience, but just older guys on this team. But a really high-level offensive team. Mark Pope runs some unbelievable stuff offensively. Kentucky's one of the best transition offenses in the country. They will push off misses. They will push off makes. Illinois' got to clean some things up in terms of picking up guys in transition, especially shooters. That's something that Illinois struggled with all year, is just losing shooters in transition when teams push on them. Kentucky will look to push, but push for threes, not push to get to the rim, push to find shooters spacing the floor. Illinois' got to be really sound there, not lose shooters, especially Brea, some of these guys, Andrew Carr, who can knock down shots in transition. But I just think this is going to be a really fun battle. Illinois is actually the favorite in this game as we sit here right now by a point and a half, which is about as good of a draw as you can ask for in a 6-3 game to be the favorite as the 6th seed. So I think this game is going to be back and forth, come down to the wire, probably in the 80s. I think that 170.5 total is accurate. I cannot wait to see how this matchup plays out. What will you be looking for here between Illinois and Kentucky?
I think obviously we just talked so much about the Illinois offense being at their best and hitting threes and, Tommy distributing, KJ distributing, finding open guys. But I do think the defense has to have, like Kentucky's going to score their points, but the defense has to have some level, some baseline of just consistency. And as you said, locating shooters, closing out, like you can't leave Kobe Brea open. You can't leave Butler open. Other guys will hit their shots if they're wide open. So some of that, obviously, it has to have, you need to have a pretty solid rebounding edge in this game too, a rebounding margin, as you did against Xavier, because Kentucky's going to hit their threes regardless. I mean, you're going to close out, sure, but Kentucky's going to hit their shots. They're going to run in transition. They're going to find buckets. So Illinois needs to create second chances on the offensive glass, as they've done all year, pretty consistently all year, and then also limit Kentucky to just one opportunity offensively for them. So that's a huge key. I mean, rebounding is always a huge key. Yeah, Illinois is going to have to hit their shots. That's always a huge key. But then, as I was saying, defensively, like you can't let, Amari Williams kind of does some similar stuff to Tommy in terms of, the offense can run through him at times. It's like the ball's just in his hands a lot for a big guy, especially at the top of the key. And he can find cutters. He can find backdoor cutters. He can find guys off screens and give them beautiful passes. So I think you got to lock him down, like in a similar sense to how teams like Xavier tried to lock Tommy down, but really failed to. And that's really a huge reason why Illinois won that game and advanced to the round of 32 for this one. So I think that is a major key. I mean, Amari Williams isn't a 3-point shooter like Tommy is, but he can still, like, when he has the ball at the top of the key, he can drive and he can bully ball somebody who's guarding him like a Merez or Tommy potentially. So I think locking him down is a really big key. And then also defensively, I would think Boswell's on Otega Owe. I don't know if you said that earlier. That's just the matchup that makes the most sense to me in terms of Kentucky's. That's like their most downhill guy. He's a big physical wing / guard. So I think that's a good matchup for Boswell, even if he's a little bit undersized. But he's shown he can deal with a little adversity and still D up on guys like that. So I think those are two huge keys to the game. Rebounding. I'm not going to talk about Illinois shooting because that's always a huge key to the game. But rebounding and getting second chances offensively and holding Kentucky to one shot defensively. And then locking down Amari Williams and Otega Owe. I think you live with like a guy like Lamont Butler he'll hit his open shots. He's been in huge games like the San Diego State run a couple of years back. I think you live with him taking some shots. I think you live with Andrew Carr hitting some threes. He's a stretch big. Like overall, Jackson Robinson's out. Kirk Crease has been out for a while. I think Kentucky's thinner than they expected to be coming into March. Like their bench doesn't go as deep as it used to. They've got like Brandon Garrison and Colin Chandler coming off the bench, guys that have played a little bit, but aren't like your big time names that you would expect from Kentucky. Typically, big time guys that make huge shots in March. So I think you live with guys like that coming off the bench and hitting a couple shots. But I think you got to lock down Otega Owe, lock down Amari Williams, and kind of live with the rest of the guys doing what they need to do.
Yeah, Owe has been the guy that's played at an unbelievable level for them here recently. He has been the catalyst of their offense. I think that has to be Kylan's matchup, and I think those two guys are built very similarly as guards that are just unbelievably strong. Their lower base is insane, and Otega Owe, he can shoot it a little bit. He doesn't want to shoot it. He wants to drive it into your chest. He wants to bully you to the rim. He wants to get downhill on you and drive it right into your ribs. And I don't think Kylan Boswell will be bothered by that because Kylan is strong. Kylan can handle a physical matchup like that. And so I think that I actually feel really good about Kylan in that matchup just from a strength perspective because teams, a lot of times they'll try to guard Owe with either they'll put a wing on him or they'll try to put their point guard on him and it just doesn't go well because Oweh's so physical. Oweh can get to the free throw line, just drive it right through your chest, and I don't think Boswell will let that happen because Boswell's so strong. I like that matchup. Kylan's going to need to have a similar defensive performance that he did against Conwell, two very different guards, but Boswell has shown his versatility defensively to guard so many different types of players. I think that's the matchup to watch in this game for sure because Oweh's been playing great. It was interesting to see Lamont Butler against Troy, who is really Kentucky's point guard and a guy who has the most experience on this stage for them, and at times has played really well for them, and has really been a guy that has led their offense and can be a really good playmaker. He just looked so off against Troy when I was watching that game, and he is dealing with a shoulder injury. It wasn't clear if he was totally going to play in this tournament. He re-aggravated a shoulder injury in the SEC tournament, missed their final 2 games of that tournament, or missed part of the first game and then missed their game that they ultimately lost in the SEC tournament. And he just looked like he couldn't really even get the ball to the rim shooting it. Like he looked so hesitant, didn't want to look for his own offense. When he shot a couple threes in that Troy game, they did not look good. He did not look confident taking them. I believe it's his shooting shoulder that's the one that's hurt. I could be off on that, but I think it is. So that's huge in this game because he can be a big weapon offensively, and he's a guy that I think Illinois doesn't have to totally worry about from a scoring and shooting perspective in this game. We'll see how aggressively Illinois plays it, but I think you can go under on him, and I think that you should make him make shots against you early to change your game plan. Force him to really get confidence back. Force him to test that shoulder as a shooter, as a scorer, because that's just not what he looked to do in that Troy game. It was a lot of Oweh, it was a lot of Amari Williams, and Lamont Butler was kind of just out there facilitating, not looking for much. That's humongous in this game. If he is really banged up, I'll be interested to see how Illinois handles that, but I think you do try to hide maybe your worst defender on him early in this game and make him turn into a scorer as opposed to a passer. But, yeah, I think offensively there should be paths to score here for Illinois. Kentucky's ball screen defense is dreadful. I think Illinois should go to that early with KJ. I think Kentucky will have a nightmare time trying to guard Tomislav Ivicic pick and pops with Amari Williams or Brandon Garrison out there. Spam that early, see if Tommy can get going early again, just like he did against Xavier. And then when Merez is in there, I think Kentucky struggled with roll men too, like Merez, who can roll off screens and either catch lobs or just dunk off a roll. Illinois hit that a couple times against Xavier. I think you got to really put Kentucky in ball screens early, make them guarded, because they've been dreadful guarding them this year. And Kentucky's given up a lot of three-point attempts this year. Their two-point defense has been pretty dreadful. Now, Williams is an athletic shot-blocking force on the inside, but if he's off the floor, Kentucky has nothing in the paint. He will get in foul trouble sometimes. If Illinois could get some fouls on him, I think that's huge, but Kentucky will try to give their bigs help in the paint. You should have opportunities to kick out to shooters. Illinois is going to need Riley, and boy, it'd be nice if Humrickhouse could hit some open shots in this game, because I think he'll get some if he's in there. He just couldn't hit one against Xavier. He's going to need to make some in this one. I think Kentucky will live with Illinois getting some three-point attempts in this game if it means over-helping in the paint, because that's where they've been vulnerable. I think they'll make Illinois have another big shooting night, so it'll be up to Illinois to make some of those shots. But I think the pace in this game is going to be crazy. And we'll see if Brad Underwood goes deeper into his bench than he did against Xavier. Maybe not deeper, but just more volume of minutes into his bench, because I think that there's going to be a ton of pace, a ton of possessions in this game. Or we'll see if he trusts his starters to handle that. But I think offensively, Illinois has got to be at their best. You mentioned it on the glass. That has to be your baseline. You got to win that battle. Keep Kentucky off the offensive glass. That's not where they're strong anyway. See if you can beat them. It's pretty good defensive rebounding team, Kentucky, but I think Illinois should have chances, especially if they take a lot of shots to crash the offensive glass. If you can own that matchup, I don't think Illinois should turn it over much in this game. Cut out some of the silly turnovers. Kentucky doesn't turn you over. They don't pressure you. They play drop. There's no reason to turn the ball over in this game. 340th in the country. Kentucky is in turnover rate defensively. A lot of Illinois' turnovers are unforced stuff. Like Xavier didn't turn you over all that much defensively, and they were getting some runouts. And, if you give Kentucky transition opportunities off of steals, live ball turnovers, that's a huge problem. That can't happen. They already can kill you even off made shots or off missed threes running and pushing the pace. If you're giving them turnovers, that's where Illinois can get in some real trouble in this game. So cut out some of the unforced stuff, and I think Illinois should be right there in a high-level offensive battle.
Yeah, for sure. Like going back to the Troy Kentucky game last night before Illinois' game, Kentucky out-rebounded Troy by one. Troy was shooting terribly for the entire first half, a lot of the second half, and they stuck in that game. I'm not saying, I mean, the Illinois-Kentucky game is going to look nothing like that probably, but Troy managed to stick around by getting second chances and kind of not owning Kentucky on the boards, but like for a mid-major going against powerhouse SEC team, probably wouldn't expect Troy to only lose the rebounding margin by one, which they did. So that was a huge part of them sticking around in that game. I think Illinois can do some similar stuff in terms of getting second chances in this one on Sunday. Just looking at, like, I'm thinking about the starting lineups at least, and I know a lot of teams don't, but does Kentucky have a Will Riley matchup? Because, like, is Andrew Carr on Will Riley? Is Amari Williams on Will Riley? I think this is another game for Will Riley where it's an ideal matchup. It's going to be a high-scoring game, as we've talked about, fast-paced game, which he likes. I think he'll have some looks in terms of beating a guy like Carr off the dribble or Garrison or like Almanor who comes off the bench. I just don't think they have a really versatile defensive matchup for Will Riley because he can, he's shown mid-range, he's shown backing guys down, getting to the low post and the block, and he's also been a good shooter recently, and he's just a great shooter overall in general. So I think this is a pretty ideal matchup for him. I think he has another really nice game. And then as you talked about with pick and roll, with pick and pop, with ball screen coverage, Kentucky's not great at that. And really a lot of teams aren't great at that when they're facing KJ and Tommy, as Kevin Harlan and other guys talked about last night, and as we've seen all year. Got to exploit that. You said spam it, spam it, spam it. I want to see the first play of the game be pick and roll or pick and pop, whichever one they choose. I want to see when Merez comes in, spam it. I want to see, I mean, you can run Ben Hummerkaus, and I don't care. Get him an open look from the top of the key shooting a pick and pop three, because I think he'll knock it down if he needs to. He was pretty cold last night. I really think I just like Illinois playing offenses similar to them, teams with a similar archetype to them in terms of pretty solid offensive efficiency, playing fast, and a not so great defense, to be honest. Kentucky is that. Xavier wasn't really that, but Illinois still managed to win that one. I just think they match up well in this one. I think if they limit Otega Owe with Boswell and maybe a little group effort with Trey White helping out a little bit or something, I like that. I think Amari Williams can be locked down by Merez or Tommy or whoever's on him. The Lamont Butler injury is massive. The Jackson Robinson injury is huge. Kirk Crease has been out for a while. That's huge. Like, they're just not as deep as they would have expected. Colin Chandler did hit a couple shots off the bench in their game against Troy. Garrison's solid. Almanor's all right, but like, they're just not super deep. Obviously, Illinois is not super deep. Their starting lineup is finally healthy. Hummerkaus is going to be solid off the bench. Merez has been great all year off the bench. You have Dre if you need him. You have Jake Davis to hit a shot if you need him. I just like Illinois' chances in this one. Obviously, they are favored. That's huge considering Kentucky's a 3 seed, Illinois is a 6. So I think Illinois just played their cards well, finally got healthy at the right time, finally understanding how to run a pretty solid offense at the right time. And they got a favorable matchup in this one. So I don't know. I just like Illinois' chances. It's going to be high-paced, fast-paced, high-scoring game. And Illinois has been pretty successful besides playing Alabama in November in those games. Like, that's just how Illinois wants to play. Obviously, it's how Kentucky wants to play, and they're a super veteran team. But I like Illinois' firepower. I like their star power. I like how Will Riley's been playing. I love how KJ played in this last one. I love how Tommy played. I love how Boswell played. We keep saying it, but I like Illinois' chances. I do think they win this one, to be honest. And I think Illinois makes it to the second weekend for the second year in a row, which is crazy to say based on how this season was looking at a certain time, how last season was looking after the Penn State game and some of those other games, after the TSJ incident. So I think it's just a testament to Brad Underwood and the coaching staff Obviously, the win hasn't happened yet, but I am predicting it. I think Illinois probably wins this one, like 88 to 86. A really fun game in Milwaukee between two massive fan bases, two really good teams. But I do think Illinois walks away with this one.
Yeah, Illinois is going to be very comfortable in this style of game, which I think is important. You look through Kentucky's season, and it's been so hard to slow them down. They're such a fast-paced run and gun offense. They want to push off makes. They want to get the ball up the floor, play so fast offensively. SEC teams had a really hard time slowing them down. A lot of times these faster teams, if you run into one of these really slow-paced, half-court type of teams who want to ugly the game up, some of these types of teams can fall into that trap a little bit and be uncomfortable. It was so hard to slow Kentucky down. You look at like the two Tennessee matchups they played. Tennessee just couldn't slow them down, and Kentucky just outworked them and continued to run. Illinois is going to be so comfortable playing Kentucky's style of game, and I think they can play it just as well as Kentucky, that's going to be huge in this game. I think Kentucky would have rather drawn a team that would have been uncomfortable playing this way, that they could run to death. Illinois is not going to be uncomfortable at all in this style of game, and I think that's huge. And I think ultimately it's just going to come down to who makes more shots, who makes more defensive plays, who gets the stops late in the game when it does come down to a few of those half-court possessions, who can execute defensively better. And I agree with you. I think it's going to come down to 1, 2, 3 possessions in this one in a game that does get into the 80s. I did like your point there real quick before I give my prediction. I think Kentucky, I mean, they've been a defense that's been very exploitable this year. I think they've got matchups you can attack, and that's a big reason why they've struggled defensively. Their starting backcourt is pretty solid on the defensive end, I think, with Butler and Owe. But some of these other guys, especially on the wing that they'll throw in there, Kobe Brea can get hunted defensively. He's a guy who's out there, one of the best shooters in the country, but he doesn't guard. I think Illinois, like if he's on Will Riley, go to that matchup as much as you can. I think Andrew Carr, very exploitable defensively, especially if teams are playing smaller lineups. I think this is a game where you probably want to avoid the Merez-Tommy lineup as much as you can, just because I think you want to spread Kentucky out as much as possible. And like if Andrew Carr's having to guard Will Riley or Trey White in a lineup where you're playing, KJ, Kylan, Trey, Will, and Tommy, your starting lineup, he's going to have a tough time with that. Very tough time. You can beat him off the dribble. Those freshmen that they're now being forced to play a little bit more since Jackson Robinson and Kirk Risa have gone out, in Travis Perry and Colin Chandler, they can make some shots. They're shooters. They can come in and give you an offensive spark. You can attack those guys defensively as well. So I think there's matchups that Illinois should have advantages here, and I don't think Almanor is a great defender either. So find those matchups, go at him. If Will Riley's got a matchup, let him work. He's confident right now. If KJ or Kylan have matchups on the perimeter with one of those guards off the floor, attack it. Try to get that ball in the paint. Kentucky has struggled there. Don't fall into the trap. As well as Illinois shot it against Xavier, don't fall into the trap of living and dying by the three, because I think if that's the strategy there, if Illinois is not generating shots in the paint, getting to the free throw line in this game, that's where Kentucky could run you out of the gym if you're cold from three, and that's all you're relying on, because I think Kentucky has so many ways to score. But find those matchups, attack them, and just settle in playing this style game. I think it'll be a game that starts similarly to the Xavier game, where it is run up and down the floor until guys are gassed by the first media timeout. But I don't think Illinois is going to be fazed by that. I think they can play that game with Kentucky, and ultimately they're just going to have to execute in this game. But I think I'm with you here with the prediction. I said on our last episode, my unofficial prediction for Illinois that felt right to me was that they get past Xavier and then they just kind of lose pretty comfortably to Kentucky in a game where they don't really show up. Maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid after a great game there against Xavier. Although also I will say on my official bracket that I submitted, I did have Illinois getting to the second weekend. I was like, I need a lower seed in the Sweet 16. I don't have a 6 seed. I had the 3 seeds in the other 3 regions getting to the Sweet 16. I'm like, this Illinois draw is good. If they just show up to play, I think they can get through it. again, they're a favorite in this game, so that tells you all you need to know about what this draw looks like. If Illinois plays their best basketball, you should win this game. Against Kentucky, I think you're about an equal caliber of basketball team with Kentucky. Kentucky's had a better overall season, but both these teams at their best, I think Illinois might be the team that wins ultimately in terms of ceiling. I think Illinois will win this game. I feel good coming off that. I feel great about what I saw from the freshmen, but more importantly, I feel great about what I saw from Illinois defensively. I think they can get enough stops when it matters in this game to hold down Kentucky, give their offense a chance to win it. And just the way that, the experience thing, the experience difference in this game doesn't bother me as much as it did when I first saw the draw because of the way Illinois handled that against Xavier, because of the way the freshmen came out and looked fearless, unafraid of the moment. Zero concerns about that heading into this game with Kentucky. And with Kentucky banged up, Butler banged up, missing Robinson, missing Kriisa, I think it sets up well for Illinois if they come to play, if they make some shots. And if they get enough defensive stops when it matters, I think they can get out of here with a win, get to their second weekend, and I'm buying in. I think Illinois gets this one done. I'm in a similar score range to you. I guess I'll say Illinois 87, Kentucky 82 final in this game, 5-point win after a couple late free throws. Think it does come down to the last few possessions, but give me the Illini. Let's go. Let's get to next week. It's so awesome. I hadn't experienced it my whole life until last year, but it's so great when you just get past this first week and then you have another week to just like take a deep breath and be like, oh, Illinois is still playing, and I get another week to get excited about NCAA Tournament basketball. Give me that for another year here with a win here. Boy, that would be awesome.
Yeah, that was so much fun last year, especially being on campus as a student.
Yeah.
Like you beat Duquesne, that was awesome. Beat Iowa State, that was maybe the best night of the year in Champaign. And then we don't have to talk about what happened after that. But yeah, let's do it again. Get back to the second weekend, knock off a really good Kentucky team, and set up a matchup with potentially Tennessee or UCLA. That game's today in a couple hours after we're recording this. Yeah, I don't know what could happen. Illinois got to win this one first, but things are still setting up pretty nicely in this region, in my opinion. And it is looking like a pretty favorable draw for Illinois after all.
Yeah, if you can't get past this one, you either see a UCLA team who you were up, I think, 18 on in Champaign and just isn't a team that strikes a ton of fear into me, or a Tennessee team who I do really like. I have them in my Final Four personally, but Illinois showed that they were a buzzer beater away from taking that team down in a game where they were horrendous offensively. So was Tennessee, to be fair. That was an ugly, ugly game without much shot making. But Illinois showed that they can play with Tennessee. And I think if Illinois' offense has another big day, that's not an easy matchup for Tennessee, even as good as they are defensively. So let's see what happens. Obviously, yeah, you got to win this game. I think this will be highly, highly entertaining. I cannot wait for this matchup on Sunday. Again, 4:15 on CBS in Milwaukee. We will be back afterwards, hopefully still previewing some basketball for next week. After this game against Kentucky. Make sure you follow along with us. Give us a follow at Champagne on Ice on X. Subscribe to the Field of 68 Podcast Network YouTube channel. Find us wherever else you get your podcasts. If anybody else getting over there to Milwaukee or sticking around Milwaukee for this game, have a great time. I hope a ton of Illinois fans get there. I think the environment that, at least I wasn't there, but it showed on TV in Milwaukee there, was phenomenal in that first round game. Illinois fans dominated Xavier fans. Going to be a little hard to overpower Kentucky fans with how insane that fan base is, but I think you can get it to 50-50 here. I think Milwaukee is maybe the best part of this whole draw for Illinois. So I hope everybody who gets over there in Milwaukee is loud and proud in that crowd. And I hope everybody enjoys this game. Let's get one more. Let's get to the second weekend, and we will talk to you afterwards right here on the Champagne on Ice podcast.